Hello and welcome to this session in which we would learn how to compute the sample size using monetary unit sampling. Now you should be familiar with monetary unit sampling because we covered it in the prior session, but what we did in the prior session when we looked at monetary unit sampling, we assumed that the sample size is given to us. So what we did is we focused on how to select items using the PPS, probability proportion to size, and the sampling interval, but we assume the sample size is giving. In this session, let's call it part 2 for MUS, we need to compute this sample size, this 5. We need to show how this is computed and more specifically what factors drives the sample size, which we're going to list them: the risk, tolerable misstatement, expected misstatement, and population size. Why do you need to understand what factors and how do they influence the sample size? Because to compute, as long as you know the formula, it's fine, you can write the figures. But the CPA exam, your accounting courses, even in the logically, you have to understand how these factors, the risk of incorrect acceptance, the tolerable misstatement, influence the sample size. This is what we will discuss in this session. Let's go ahead and get started. Before we proceed any further, I have a public announcement about my company, FarhatLectures.com. Most students and CPA candidates struggle not because audit is too hard, but because it's taught fast and the logic behind the procedure isn't explained clearly. Then everything feels disconnected. At Farhat Lectures, we break audit down step by step. We explain the why behind the standards, the logic behind the assertions, risks, procedures, evidence, so the whole process finally clicks. When the concepts connect, audit becomes clear and manageable. You stop memorizing and start understanding. Ready for auditing to make sense? Start your free trial at farhatlectures.com. I'm going to start with looking at the formula, the sample size equal to a confidence factor divided by the tolerable misstatement as a percentage of population. So we have a numerator and a denominator. Let's look at the numerator. It's confidence factor. Where do we get this confidence factor from? We get it from a table. There's a statistical table will be provided to you and you will use it. How about the denominator? The denominator will be generated from taking the tolerable misstatement, TM, as a percentage of the population divided by the population, and you'll find a percentage. And you will take the confidence interval from the table divided by that percentage. Now it's very important to understand the relationship intuition in this formula. If we look at the numerator, and the numerator is the confidence factor. Again, it's giving to you. But let's assume, for the sake of conversation, we want to increase our confidence in our decision. So we want to increase this confidence factor. How do you think the confidence factor would influence your N, your sample? Look, if I want to be more confident, what do I have to do? I have to do more work. I have to increase my sample. It means there's a direct or a positive relationship between the confidence factor and the sample size. In other words, if I want to reduce it, I can reduce my N. I could reduce N. And every time I increase N, I have to do more work. Every time I reduce N, I do less work. How about the denominator, the tolerable misstatement? As the tolerable misstatement decrease, so what's the tolerable misstatement? How much am I willing to tolerate in misstatement? So let's assume I set it up at 10,000. I'm willing to tolerate 10,000. If I am willing to tolerate more, rather than 10,000, if I increase this to 15,000, if I can tolerate more, so if my tolerable misstatement goes up, guess what? I can do less work because I'm willing to take more of a chance. Now, why would I do that? Maybe there are other reasons why, but if I'm willing to tolerate more, there is a negative relationship between the tolerable misstatement and the sample size. Now, if I'm going to take my tolerable misstatement and change it to 8,000, I'm accepting less tolerable misstatement. It means I have to do more work. So if the tolerable misstatement went down, how does that affect N? The sample size should go up. There's an inverse relationship. Make sure you know this. Now on the exam day, just remember the formula. If I take 10 divided by 2, 10 is my confidence factor, 2 is my denominator, equal to 5 sample size. If I want to increase my confidence, my answer will be higher. And the opposite is true. If I kept my numerator the same and I increase my tolerable misstatement, my sample size goes down. It's a relationship that should make sense, and mathematically it should make sense. At the end of the day, on the exam day, if you're under pressure, just jot these numbers down real quick and compute them. Now I want to explain step by step the factors that affect the sample size. We said risk is one of them. Specifically, what risk are you taking? Well, the risk that you are taking when you do an audit and you select the sample, the acceptable risk of incorrect acceptance, called area. We covered it in the prior session. And what is area? It's the risk that the auditor accepts a balance as fairly stated when indeed the account is not fairly stated. Simply put, you say, wow, it's good, the account is fairly stated, in reality it's not. We call this, if you remember, type 2 error, where we accept it when we should not. Now area, let's assume it's set at 10%. It means the auditor is 90% confident in the sample results. Now how do we set this at 10%? We look at their internal control, whether we are relying, they have strong internal control or weak internal control, our professional judgment, prior audit, talking to management. At the end of the day, it's a professional judgment. Now, how would area affect the sample size? If we go lower with area, rather than 10%, we set area at 5%. It means we want to be 95% confident. And if you want to be more confident, you want more work. So as area goes down and goes up. Now, if you are willing to take more chances, if you want to set area at 20% and now you only want to be 80% confident, so as area goes up 20%, I can do less work. My sample goes down. Again, area is determined using internal control assessment and professional judgment. So that's the risk. The population, how large is my population, will determine my sample size. Generally speaking, the larger is the population. If I'm looking at 3.2 million in inventory, and now I'm looking at an inventory at 10 million, if I have an inventory of 10 million, my inventory should go up. It doesn't mean I should triple my inventory, but it should go up, but not necessarily I double it or triple it, not in proportion, but generally speaking, it should go up. What else could drive the sample size? The tolerable misstatement. It's the misstatement that the auditor can accept in the account and still say it's fairly stated. For example, here in our example, we're going to tolerate a $64,000 tolerable misstatement. Now, and we're going to compute a percentage called tolerable misstatement as a percentage of the population. So it's going to take 64 divided, we're looking at a population of 3.2 million, we're going to get 2%. But here's what you need to know, and this is what goes into the denominator and the formula. But here's what you need to know. If you can tolerate more, if you're willing to tolerate $80,000, so if TM goes up, you need to do less work. N goes down. If your TM goes down, if you only tolerate 50,000 rather than 64, you need to do more work, N will go up. Make sure you know these relationships. What else goes into the sample size decision? The estimated population misstatement, or EM. What is that? Well, the auditor guesses ahead of time, this is how much I'm going to find. Now, how do they do this guessing? They look at factor like past audit, past result, preliminary testing. They looked at the company and they're like, okay, this is what we think it's going to happen. They talk to management. They look at analytical procedures. They use their judgment. For our purposes, we are going to go with an EM figure of 12,800. Now we could compute a ratio called expected misstatement to tolerable misstatement, and we need this. So we're going to look at the expected misstatement, 12,800, to the tolerable misstatement of 64, and we're going to get a ratio of 0.2 or 20%. Why do we need this ratio? This ratio will help us find the confidence factor. You remember the numerator? That numerator is given from a table, but to go and use that table,
you need the expected misstatement to tolerable misstatement. So you're going to have this table here and make sure you are looking at the risk of incorrect acceptance. And here we are taking a 10% chance. Expected misstatement to tolerable misstatement, we said it's 20%. If we look across and we find out that our confidence factor is 3.41, that's what you have to do. Make sure when you read the table, you read it properly. Risk, if you're using 5%, we're going to see what happens if you change that. So the input for our example is 10% area. EM to TM ratio is 20%, expected to tolerable. The confidence factor is 3.41. Now, lowering area, if we lower area from 10 to 5, what does it mean lowering area? Lowering area means you want to be more confident. Your confidence factor will go up. It will go up to 4.63, given everything else the same. If either input goes up, the sample size will increase. Now let's plug in the figures in the formula, and let's look at the sample size, which is the confidence factor divided by the 2%. Where did we get the 2% from? Let me show you where we got the 2% from. So we have to be careful because we have 2% and we have 20%. Remember, we got the 2% from the tolerable misstatement as a percentage of the population. Don't confuse this with the factors that we found, which is the expected misstatement divided by the tolerable misstatement. We use this 20% to get to the confidence table, to get to the 20%, to find the confidence factor. So don't confuse those two. So the auditor, the answer should be 170.5. We're going to round it to 171. So the auditor will use 171 intervals, which means 171. Now, very important to note, I should have mentioned this in the prior session. 171 does not mean we're going to select 171 distinct items, because what's going to happen sometime is we're going to find, you remember, we're going to have intervals, and sometime the intervals, the hits will be in the same interval. So if we have 5,000 to 7,500 and we have a 2,500 interval here, we could have got a number between 5,000 and 7,500 more than once. We only have to select that sample only once. So large item may be selected more than once. Certainty units, we don't. Once we selected one time, that's it. If that number comes back again, we don't have to select it again. Now we are ready to compute the sampling interval. Once we have the sample size, the population divided by the sample size, and the interval should be 3 million divided by 171, 18,713. This means you have to choose a random star between 1 and 18,713. Let's assume it's 9,500. That's the first hit. Then we'll add to it 18,713. And this will be the second hit, so on and so forth, to produce 171 sample hits. Remember, we may produce less because if that sample was selected more than once, we don't have to add it again. And we map each hit to the cumulative range to identify selected items. That's something that we looked in part 1. So what we did in part 1, we did this step. And now I showed you how we came up with the whole thing. And the reason I showed you the first step is to show you the importance or the value or the use of MUS. Now, what are we going to do? Are we done yet? Absolutely not. We're going to go to the third part of MUS, which is next we need to determine the acceptability of the population using MUS. At the end of the day, we have to make a decision. So we looked at what is MUS. Then in the first session, we looked at what's MUS and the method we select the units. In this session, what I showed you is how to select N, which is how to come up with the sample size. In the next session, we're going to take everything that we learned and decide on the acceptability of the population using monetary unit sampling. Now, this relationship, I already went over it several times during this session, but this is a good summary. The relationship between area and sample size, population and sample size, tolerable misstatement and the sample size, estimated misstatement and the sample size, the confidence factor and the sample size. Make sure you know this inside out. Let's take a look at this multiple choice question from farhatlectures.com. A client's AR population is 4.5 million. Okay, fair enough. Tolerable misstatement is reduced from 180 to 90,000. What happened to this sample size if we're using MUS, monetary unit sampling? Well, the first thing you can do is, if you are on Farhat lectures on the website, you could ask the AI to explain to you what's MUS sample size, and maybe it will also tell you the relationship between tolerable misstatement and MUS, assuming you need a refresher. You're looking at this question, but you kind of forgot about it. That's the first thing you can do. Or you could just go in and try to hit the answers. So what happened here is our tolerable misstatement, it used to be 180. We want to tolerate 180. Now we can half it. We can tolerate 90,000. So what's going to happen to n, to the sample size, as a result of this? Simply put, do you know the relationship between the tolerable misstatement and the sample size? That's it. Well, first, it's unchanged. No, there's going to be a change. Well, let's see. It went from 180 to 90. Answer A is doubles, sample size doubles. This is an easy one. And the reason I put the numbers like this to kind of to trick you to think, yes, it doubles, or it's halved. Okay, I should have also put halved or double. I should have double halved rather than it changed. Now, it doesn't have to do that. It doesn't double, it doesn't halve. What can we say? What can we say about the sample size? We cannot say it's gonna double. We're not gonna say it's halved. We cannot make that determination. But at least we need to know the direction, right? Would the sample size increase or would the sample size decrease? So that's the question, really. Here's what's gonna happen. If you can tolerate more errors, if your tolerable misstatement goes up, and in this situation it went down. If your tolerable misstatement goes up, you can do less work, so n will go down. In this session, your tolerable misstatement is going down. You are tolerating less. You want to be more careful. You don't want to miss anything because your tolerable misstatement is very small, and as soon as you cross it, your account balance is not fairly stated. If that's the case, if my tolerable misstatement goes down, the relationship between TM and N, if my tolerable misstatement goes down, I have to select more. It's a negative relationship. It's an inverse relationship. Therefore, I need to do more work. Therefore, my sample will increase. It doesn't double. You cannot say it double, but it's going to increase. So you cannot make that decision. All what you can say is you need a larger sample size. It doesn't mean it will double. You cannot say it's going to double. So it's not always proportional. It's not linear. B is the opposite effect, and TM does affect the sample size. What should you do now? If you want to, you could also ask AI to explain the correct and incorrect answer in a similar way, or ask AI to give you another similar MCQ to practice one more time. What should you do as a CPA exam candidate, as an accounting student? You want to go to Farhat lectures, look at additional lectures, multiple choice, podcast lesson. Use AI to help you learn the concept. We are here to help you. The best investment you can make is invest in yourself. Good luck, stay safe, and God bless.